Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmitty, Swanny and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right. How are we?
Not too bad. How are you, Schmitty?
Oh, I'm very good. Thanks for asking. Yeah.
Clarkey?
Yes. Well, I don't know that I have anything exciting to tell anyone. Oh, actually, I do. I don't know if you've seen, but I've got a mohawk going on.
Oh, we haven't got that haircut.
Oh, you do a bit, yes.
Yeah, no, it's not a bit. Like it's
massive.
Now, I couldn't see it with your headphones on, of course. Now I can see it clearly.
Serious, but I'm going to dye this bit blue for Movember.
Okay.
Yes, I'm going to look very ridiculous for the whole month of November, which is nice. I'm leaving the facial hair and doing something silly with my hair just because that's what I do, different things.
Okay.
Well, if you're going to do something silly with your hair, do you think you could perhaps go for this look instead and go orange instead of blue?
Who's that beaker?
And for our listeners, I've put up the Muppet speaker because every time I see someone with that hairdo, I'm thinking, what's with the beaker look?
Yeah.
Did he make funny noise? I can't remember. What did Beaker do? Did he squeak?
He did this sort of silent mouthing thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that is exciting. Good on you, Clarkey. And that's a very, very good cause, even if you will have a silly hairdo for a while that we can.
Well, it'll be a very good talking point so that we can talk about November all the way through the month. How nice is that?
Good idea. Good plan. Swanny, anything interesting from you?
I wish. No. I was actually thinking about the fact that Trial by Wine is so tricky for someone who's 3 hours behind and in mum mode. It's kind of like I'm the anti-Trial by Winer. I do apologise. I feel like I let the team down hugely on that in that respect.
No, you don't. You're here.
Or I could really be on brand and be, driving around or not even able to drive around because I was such a wreck.
Getting a DUI here and there.
DUI. Maybe I could be on that show, what's it called? RBT.
Interventions.
They pull me over. Don't get me started on interventions.
Okay.
I had a break for a week. Did I get you started on it?
I watched quite a few, yes.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope, isn't it?
It is. All right. Well, I don't have anything to report. I'm back at work next week. And
that is exciting.
Everything for me is tracking nicely hip-wise, so all good.
Brilliant.
What are you drinking?
Yeah, I am drinking, thanks for asking, a Heathcote Winery HQ Shiraz, which is delicious.
Very nice. We're having a 2018 Black Ink, which is a red from Indigo Valley, Indigo Winery, Indigo Vineyard, and it's Shirazi, perhaps a little bit Durify. It's quite nice.
I like a Durif.
Yeah, it's a bit of a heavy one, but not as heavy.
I don't know what that is.
Petite Syrah in other places. It's like a
Thanks for explaining one word with another one that I don't know.
Shiraz. I just explained it, but you talked over the top. I was saying a Durif is like a fuller, sweeter, fatter Shiraz, in my opinion. It's lovely. It's a very nice, great.
We do love it.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing that I have no experience in anything to do with wine?
And yet you're on a podcast with wine in the title.
But honestly, the red wine thing, I could probably get by in some chat on white from my memory, but because I've never drunk red as well, all the nuances that you talk about, I'm thinking, I have no idea.
Never to
Well, you just need to pay more attention to what we say and then fake it when someone asks you. We tell you about it.
I can't even remember that word. What was the word for Petite Syrah? What was it?
Durif.
Would I be hoping for a Durif? Would I be
looking
for a wine? Longing for a Durif? Okay.
Especially in the cooler months, I think. Yes.
Oh, right.
Open fire.
And you, Swanny, what are you drinking?
Tap water.
Shock me.
Delicious.
Tap water.
There you go. I did shock you.
What vintage?
Well done.
Do you honestly want to know? It's
October 2022?
Quite possibly, because I haven't even gone and got a bottle. It's from last week, still sat in this room. So
nice, beautiful.
Nice. I think it's vintage.
Fresh.
That would be refreshing.
We're avoiding it. I hope I don't get too parched.
Who are we? I'm Schmitty.
I'm Swanny.
And I'm Clarkey. And together we are...
Trial
by
Wine.
Woo!
Trial by tap water.
And Swanny, what have you got for us today?
I do have a story for us today, and I was trying to work out why I like this story, because there are aspects of it that actually make you feel good, is kind of the upshot of it. And there are aspects of it that are absolutely terrifying. So hopefully I can sort of share that balance with you. The hard part, as often is the case, is in what manner do I want to share the story? Do I want to give it all the way up front, or do I want to sort of take you through what happened? And that's the challenge. And I've decided that I'm going to have to give the game away and tell you what happens up front, because that way I can go into each of the characters that are involved a little bit more. Otherwise, it's a little bit sort of chop and change. Well, it'll be chop and change anyway.
It's like one of those movies where you see the end and then they say 2 years earlier, and then you've got to work out how they got there.
Oh, I could have perhaps done that.
Johnny hates that. He
so what I'll do is
I'll travel in films.
Yeah, well, I don't. I was going to ask that of you, but I shan't. So first of all, my sources. People, People magazine in the US, but it's online, so people.com. A&E, which is a network, I think, in the US, and a website which I find interesting in the fact that it's called the Cinemaholic. And it's come up a few times when I've been looking at things, yeah. I also referenced, I don't know what you'd call it, it's on YouTube, and it's called Unseen, and that was actually really helpful. And then finally, of course, Wikipedia. Of course,
Nice.
your favourite.
Yep.
Which, by the way, I donated to on our behalf the other day, because I thought we
good
get a
on
lot of
you.
joy out of Wiki, so we
That's
should
lovely,
pay
we
for
do.
it.
Yeah, well done.
So our story starts in the city of Roseville in Minnesota in the US, and we are going to look at a family that has 4 people. There's Mary and her husband Irv, and their children Steve and daughter Elizabeth, who we can call Beth.
Did you say Irv?
Irv. Yeah,
Right.
don't, he's like he's out of an American
Yes,
sitcom.
such-
Irv.
Okay.
Yeah. So Mary and Irv Stauffer and their children Steve and Beth Stauffer. And this family they're living in Minnesota, but they're actually about to leave. So they've all packed up, they're in their house, and the reason is the next day they're moving to the Philippines.
Oh.
And the reason they're moving to the Philippines is they're actually returning there because they've been there before, because the parents are Christian missionaries. And obviously they've lived there for part of their life, and they've been back in Minnesota, where they're from, and they're about to leave the very next day. So this is, May 16th in 1980. And so Mary and her daughter Elizabeth, Beth, head off to grab a haircut so they look presentable before they head abroad the next day.
Responsible. Well done.
Yes.
I wonder how long it took for them, and did they need to have 3 people come and finish the job off?
That is a very good question. I think Schmidt is referring to an incident I've just had this afternoon at the hairdressers, where I had to kind of march up to the
All
front and
hands
say,
on deck to finish the job.
this has gone on for too long. We need to get this one out of here.
An hour and 45 minutes is too long for a blowy. Even I think that.
Jesus. Thought we were talking haircuts.
Anyway, back to the story. So on this afternoon, they've had their haircuts, and as they head back to their car, a man approaches them with a gun and tells them that they've got to get into their car, and he's going to drive. They need to drive him somewhere.
What?
Yes. So that's May 16th, 1980. Where I'd like to take you now is to Taiwan in 1950.
Very, around the world.
In 1950?
It is a little 1950.
And timey-wimey
Jeez.
machine.
Oh,
Yeah.
my Lord.
Hang on, let me get
1950
the whiteboard. I'm just going to start plotting it out, because I don't
You
think...
might need this a little bit. I'm hoping I'm doing the right thing. Tony might listen to this and go, what shit is she going on with now?
Yeah, I tell you, he hates time travel.
Yeah. I may have made a grave mistake in taking us forward and backwards. Anyway, let's see how we go.
Give it a go.
So in October 1950 in Taiwan, a boy is born. And I'm going to try and attempt to say his name once. And after that, I'm going to use the easiest part of his name as to reference him by, only so I don't offend people, because I'm so concerned that my pronunciation is just woeful.
Well, Chumbawalla Gilawata is hard to say.
Well, Ming Sen Shiue, I think is how you say the last part of the surname. And that's what he says.
S-H-U-I?
S-H-I-U-E?
Yeah.
Shiue?
Shiue, I
I'm not
reckon.
sure.
Shiue.
Okay.
Shoo, I reckon. Yeah,
So I might not say that again. I might just call him Ming.
Okay.
Which is probably very, very inappropriate. It's probably like calling someone, who's about to do all these things. Brian, Doug, Pal, you know what I mean. Anyway, so Ming Sen Shiue was born in October 1950 in Taiwan. However, when he was 8 years old, he and his family moved to Minnesota. His mother and father and 2 siblings. His father was a professor at the University of Minnesota. However, shortly after they arrived, 3 years later, he died. Ming was described as violent towards his younger siblings, red flag, often beating them during adolescence and adulthood.
Jesus.
Now, to be fair, my kids sometimes beat on each other, so I'm not sure if that's the kind of thing that is, having a little roughhousing here and there. It might have been a little bit more severe.
Hey,
I've
got a question. Was the man with the gun 30 years old?
Ooh, he was 29 years old, so yeah, there you go. Ooh. You're so good at this.
I'm a natural.
What a coincidence.
Yeah.
Don't worry, when Tony's listening back, he'll be like, where'd he get that from?
In his teen years, Ming was reportedly engaged in criminal activity as a juvenile, such as starting fires in apartments for strangers and throwing rocks at vehicles. So nothing
Hell,
major.
he's nuts.
Throwing rocks at vehicles. Everyone's done that.
However, for his role in the arsons, he was ordered to participate in psychotherapy at the age of 14. So people had seen him, and I guess sometimes his behaviour was off, shall we say. His mother has said that he often lied, and he was always persistent that he was right.
Well, hang on.
He could be a bit
if he often lied and his pants were on fire, which explains why he's setting apartments on fire. It was a complete accident.
Quite possibly.
That would stand up in court.
It would. There's a quote here that I feel very uncomfortable repeating because I actually think maybe it's an Asian thing. It would make sense. Referring to his mother again, she says, his uncontrollable child, he took no responsibility for his physical behaviour, thus causing her to be fearful. And she described him as someone having, and this is the quote, feelings like a dog. You know how much I love my Arthur, so I find that offensive to even have to say, but maybe it's an Asian saying or something that he didn't have human feelings. He had feelings of a dog, where I think most people think that dogs have lovely feelings. So
I don't know what a dog feels. I know they lick their balls a lot when they're male, but I don't know what they feel.
Only because they can.
Exactly. And who would
did that.
Stop them, hey? Who would hold that against them?
Maybe he did that.
Only if he had some ribs removed, Carla. I don't think he could physically do it.
Gross. From 1965 to 1966, Shiue attended Alexander Ramsey High School in Roseville, where he came to have a crush on his 9th grade algebra teacher. He later confessed during proceedings that due to his infatuation, he began sexually fantasizing about his teacher. He later wrote stories about his fantasies with fictional characters from movies eventually, which included consensual sex. However, they also included rape and gang rape. In later years, after he realised he did not find complete satisfaction from his fantasies, he decided he best kidnap his teacher. Do we have any idea who that
Schrofer, whatever her name was?
teacher may have been?
Oh, God.
Yes.
Oh,
Mary
that poor
Stauffer
woman.
was
Stauffer,
his
sorry.
algebra teacher. So when he was about 15 or 16 years old. So it wasn't like she was his algebra teacher for a long time. It was for a period of time where, like you do with most teachers in high school.
Yeah, but to have an obsession with someone for 15 years and then abduct them is revolting. Okay.
So that's where we're headed. So
Excellent.
that's 1965 to 1966.
I'm looking forward to that good bit of this story.
Yeah, I know. Feel good bit.
Yeah.
Yes. After school, Ming's interest in Mary Stauffer doesn't abate. In fact, it becomes a full-blown obsession. And very unhealthily, he becomes a stalker. So there are a number of years where Mary Stauffer and her family have no idea, but Ming is trying to find her. In 1975, so what's this, 10 years after he was her student, he locates a house that he believes is Mary's house. He breaks into the house with a firearm intending to kidnap her. However, it wasn't her residence. She didn't live there. It was actually her in-laws.
Wow.
Oh, my.
They owned the house, and of course he's seen their surname as being the same. He gets into the house, he forces them to the ground, he ties them up and threatens to kill them if they report the crime. So what do you think they do?
They don't report it.
Correct.
Mm.
So that home invasion was never reported. And in fact, I don't even know, there's no record to say that they did or didn't even share those details with the wider family.
Wow.
It's not referenced. No one had it on their radar. I think they just saw it as some random event with some, crazy man coming in, and them so fearful that something could happen that they just got on with their life. So that is horrendous. So what we find out is during that period of time, those sort of 10 years or whatever else, where he's trying to find her, she was actually already in the Philippines at least a first time with her family.
Right.
So they were already there as Christian
Safe.
missionaries. Yeah. However, they return to Minnesota in 1979.
Right.
The year before, these two ladies, sort of mother and daughter, are in the car park. It's a year later, in early 1980, that Ming learns that Stauffer is living at Bethel University, and that's because Irv is working at the university, and he begins to stalk her. So again, she has no idea, but in documents that they find later, he made 4 attempts. I don't know how no one realised. They must have been pretty poor attempts to abduct her.
To abduct her?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
To the point that she didn't even know.
Well, no, she didn't know.
They were poor attempts.
And I found one that they reference as saying that it doesn't make a great deal of sense to me, but they use it from a court document to say at one point he had attempted to drill from an apartment underneath her bed. And I was like, yeah, but what was
Did
it?
he watch a lot of like Roadrunner? And
Exactly. It's like, but what was he going to do? Drill a hole or I don't know. And did no one notice that?
He's just cutting the hole, the big round hole for it to drop down with a saw. And then look down and there's a saw coming up. What's going on there? Far out.
Oh, God. Rather unbelievably, no one seems to have noticed that at the time, or just how dangerous his obsession had got. It's such a significant period of time, right? We're now like 15 years he's been obsessing and he couldn't stalk, as I said, the entire time because she was in the Philippines, but certainly since she has returned, he's on the job. And so now I'm going to take you to the day of May 16th, which is where I sort of started off, which is the day that he abducts Mary and Elizabeth Stauffer. So they've gone to have their haircuts, as we said, the day before they were heading back to the Philippines to continue their missionary work. He tracks them down to this beauty salon in Roseville. When Stauffer leaves the salon, she and her daughter are kidnapped at gunpoint. He ties them up and first of all, he gets them into the car and he directs them to drive. And at the very first set of traffic lights, a police car comes up behind them. There's nothing to be alarmed about. No one knows what's going on. But he says to Mary at that time, if that car follows us when we turn left, because he's directing where to go, you're dead. And as it turns out, they go left, the police car drives on. And it was one of those moments where potentially something could have happened, but there was nothing to suggest that there was anything going on in the car. And remember, he's got them at gunpoint, so they can't react. He's waiting for them to, and they don't know who he is. They've got, no idea what's going on. They're totally horrified. At the start of this ordeal, he's got them in the car right at gunpoint, and he demands that she drive the car to a remote location and park. This is where he bounds Mary and Elizabeth's hands, and he shoves them in the car's, we would say boot. I think in the US they would say trunk. So he's got them out of town, and he's got them in the boot at this point. But they make so much noise that they're sort of banging whatever else and trying to escape that he pulls up a second time. And I have read somewhere that the reason he'd taken them from the front of the car to the back, although I suspect he would have had to do that at some point anyway, was because they were praying so loudly, which I'm sure was absolutely the case.
They were praying so loudly?
In the car,
Right.
So he's put them in the boot. He's covered them up with duct tape. He continues driving, and now they're making so much noise trying to escape and draw attention, he stops a second time. And it's when he stops a second time, he sees that Mary has been successful in partially freeing her daughter. So now he's not well pleased, and he gets angry, and now he actually starts to threaten them. I don't think there's been a lot of dialogue or a lot of threat. I think it's mainly the gun that's been doing the talking up until this point. But now he's agitated and he starts threatening them. It's at this point 2 young boys who are nearby notice that something's going on. There's a bit of a kerfuffle. And one of the boys, a little 6-year-old called Jason, walks over to the trunk and the boot and he sees Mary and Beth, and all he has time to say is, whoa. And Mary hears that, and then he is grabbed by Ming.
Oh, God.
And he is thrown into the trunk. The boot is closed, and then he drives away.
One in, all in.
So there's now 3 of them in the boot.
But what happened to the other little
Mary,
kid then?
How big is this boot?
He's been left.
So he saw
The
it?
other little boy was left. Yeah.
Enough room.
The other little boy's been left at the park or, wherever they'd pulled over.
Did he get the number plate?
No, he didn't. That's because Jason was only 6, so I don't know how old the little one. They would have been little.
Yeah,
They
it
were
would have been
little.
amazing if he did. I thought maybe that was the feel-good bit, but
No, that's not the feel-good
Okay.
bit. This is really not the feel. This is the only bit that's not the feel-good bit. Actually, actually, that's a total. That's absolutely wrong. Scrap that. There's a lot more than not feel-good bit to come, but there's a particularly bad bit coming. So
I feel like
when
I've
they're in
been
the back of the
misled.
car. We've got to do the highs and the lows. We've got to go through the lows to get to the highs. Yeah, I have missold it, haven't I? I do apologise. Yeah. So the 3 of them are in the boot, and it's at this point that the little boy is whimpering, and Mary, as the mother who, her young daughter's there, she is trying to calm them down, especially the little boy, and she's actually saying, my name's, Mary, and you're here with my daughter Beth, and this woman just sounds so lovely, and she's trying to put him at ease, and they're banging. Sorry, it's really distressing, and they're banging around a bit in the car and trying to work out what to do, try and set themselves free. Anyway, I don't think that Ming had obviously thought of including a third person in his plan. So he pulls over in a deserted area and he takes little Jason out and he beats him with a rod and leaves him dead.
Because I didn't see that coming.
So that's all done quite
I thought you were going to say he let him go.
No. So back in Roseville, the afternoon is progressing and Irv is starting to become concerned that he hasn't heard or seen Mary and Beth. It's not like he can give them a call back in the day. They just haven't returned. So the afternoon goes on and on and on. And over a period of time into the evening, he finally starts to get worried. And when he calls the police to say, look, my wife and daughter are missing, it's at that point he hears that they're actually looking for a young boy called Jason Wilkman, who's also been reported missing. So people don't know if there's a connection, but interestingly that there's missing people from the same, not area, but same town. So, there are some people are starting to think, is there a connection? They can't see that there would be. And I guess it's only through that little boy, because the little boy didn't see what was in the boot, the other boy that survived, right? Yeah. So there's no true connection made at that point. But we now have 3 people that are missing as of the night of May the 16th, 1980. It's at this point that Ming takes Beth and her mother, Mary, to his house. Once he arrives there, he locks Mary and Beth in a closet that is just 21 inches wide and 4 feet long, and he leaves them there. So he just puts them in there and they are left. And it's actually not until the next day that he allows Mary out and he ties her up in the living room.
I'm trying to get my head around the dimensions. 21 inches deep or wide?
No, deep. It's 4 inches long. 4 inches, sorry, 4 feet. Oh, wow. I probably should have done the conversion into centimetres.
No, but I'm just wondering, is it 4 feet wide
I don't know.
and 21 inches?
At 1.2 meters.
It says 21 inches wide. So let's have a look. So 21.
50 centimetres-ish.
So it's a ruler and a half.
Wide and 1.2 meters tall. About that.
It looks like, and I don't know, but like a
like
narrow
a little half
closet. Maybe it was under. I don't know if it was under stairs. I don't think that it was. But like sometimes when you see something that looks, it's kind of it's an afterthought. It just happens to fit into an area. It doesn't look like
a little cubby.
Yes,
cupboard.
like a little cubby. Yeah. Yes, I think like a broom cupboard, something that's sort of not much more to it than that. So the next day, Ming takes Mary out and ties her up in the living room. And it's at this point that he reveals who he is, because she has no idea. And she reveals she was his maths teacher, to which she says, I assume I didn't give you a very good grade. So she didn't lose a sense of humour at that point. And he says, well, I've been looking for you for a very long time. You only gave me a B.
Are you kidding?
And as a result of you only giving me a B, I did not get the scholarship that I wanted to go into university. I couldn't go to university, and I had to go to Vietnam.
Really?
It turns out...
And that's why you became infatuated with her?
No. It turns out that all is a lie.
There you go.
But that's what he told her. You have ruined my life. As a result of my B grade, I didn't get into, I didn't get a scholarship, didn't get to uni, and I was drafted to go to Vietnam.
All of this obsession, needing. It wasn't sexual. It was all.
No, it was sexual.
wanting to-
The other bit was more
Oh,
like,
it was totally sexual.
Oh, right.
Because I thought it was just anger about having to go to Vietnam and her giving him a
no,
beat.
that was his
No. That's
where I was
lying.
going.
I missed. Sorry.
Once he reveals himself to Mary,
Oh,
it's not.
Please.
No, not like that. Sorry, boom, boom. No. When he told Mary who he was, 36-year-old Mary had no recollection at all. Because remember, for her, again, it's another 10 years. Is that right? That's not right.
It'd be like 14
Yeah,
years.
that's right.
Or
Yeah,
something.
it's 15.
Yeah.
No, because of her age, she was 36. So she's 36 at the time. So she has no recollection. And then he tells her, of course, well, I was a student. But she's like, oh, maybe I can remember, but there's nothing alarming.
Yeah, I
that
mean,
know
that
about
would be
him.
like the beginning of her career. She was pretty young when she was teaching him, yeah.
And then she said, like when pushed, she was like, yeah, actually, I do remember he was very bright, very capable, just a typical 9th grade boy. But then, he plays on this, you gave me a B.
But he was only bright enough to get a B.
Yeah.
He didn't apply himself. He was too busy beating on his brothers and sisters.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it's interesting. He also went on to say, I think I said that he was being sent to Vietnam. And I've read a couple of times that he also told her that he was a prisoner of war. So he was really...
Are they true facts?
No, none of it's true.
He didn't go to Vietnam. I didn't think so. She's missed that out of the story.
No,
Right, sorry. Okay.
No, he didn't go to Vietnam. He did go to university, but he was just lying to her to try and get, I don't know, a degree of empathy, I guess, as to, or a reason. The reason I had to, kidnap you, the reason this has had to happen is because
it's your fault.
Look what you did to me. When in actual fact, it had nothing to do with that at all. So once they've been the sort of revelation of who they are, he then, I guess, gets down to the business of why he had actually kidnapped her in the first place. And it's just horrendous. He starts to rape her and film raping her. He recorded the conversations that he had with her. He recorded the rapes. I have read, and I think it's an absolute blessing, that the daughter didn't understand what was going on. She didn't have that level of understanding, and she wasn't necessarily exposed to it. So when he was taking Mary out of the cupboard and taking her somewhere else to rape her, the daughter didn't have the knowledge to know what could be going on. And she said that obviously helped her a lot. She didn't understand what he was doing to her mother. Whereas I think if you knew that would take it to an entirely different level of suffering for the poor child. And maybe even for the mum. I don't know if she knew. I think she probably, from what I can gather from this woman, I think she would have been very successful in trying to shelter her daughter from whatever she could when she was being put back in the thing. I don't think she was going into any detail about what was going on out there. I think she was sheltering from her from that harsh reality. While he kept her in the house, he often kept them separated. He would place Elizabeth, the daughter, in a box in his van for 8 hours while he was at work.
What?
And this is so correct. Isn't that the thing where you're reading along? And that's not supposed to be an interesting point in the story, but it's that thing where I read it and I go, how do people have the time? How do they have
Just about being organised.
Is that your takeaway?
I can't handle 3 kids, pick-up, drop-offs, meals, podcasting, all that stuff. This man can hold down a full-time job and have 2 people kidnapped that he's got at home.
It's just time you got yourself a box and put some kids in it. And that'll sort it out.
We even get you 3 boxes if you like.
Oh, God. Can you believe it? It's that thing of like when people are able to maintain their normal life, that's why people aren't going, you know what, Ming's missing. Yeah. What's he up to? No, Ming's going to work.
He's actually quite chipper at the moment. He's happier than he's been in a while.
Interesting. To sort of not have to sort of spend too much time on this. Well, actually, it is actually the crime, so I do need to spend some time on it. But basically, there's a situation that goes on, and it goes on for a long time. So remember, they were kidnapped or abducted on the 16th of May, 1980. And then the rape continues. Ming continues to go to work. At one point, he actually takes them in his car. Or actually, whilst he's taking the daughter to work with him, he has a Winnebago that he takes to a work conference in Chicago.
What?
Oh, my Lord.
Correct. And he takes them both with him. And he holds them hostage by using the gun and using threats. So throughout the whole thing, he keeps telling them, should they try to escape, he will murder Irv and the son Steve. So they're also under that sort of, as we hear time and time again with all these crimes, so much of it is about the psychological control, not just what they're doing. So they've been warned, it has been promised, that threat is there, that you move, you leave, you attempt to leave, I will not only murder you, but I'm going to murder your family, the rest of your family. But
why would you not believe it though?
you've been successful up to this point.
Absolutely, and he's brutalising you constantly,
And they know that they've got rid. They don't know what's happened to Jason, but they know that he was with them and then he wasn't. So they absolutely believe what he's saying. So he only let them out of that house that one time, and he took them, it was a job fair. I think I said it was a work conference, a job fair in Chicago in a rented Winnebago. And I've seen a scene whereby he takes Mary with him at gunpoint, or not gunpoint, but, with him, but under duress kind of thing. So she's been told, be under no illusion what will happen if you do the wrong thing. So she's very compliant. But the daughter, she actually pulls back, like he's got all the stuff, the windows in the Winnebago all covered up. All hooked down, everything's covered. And she actually somehow makes noise and she gets the attention of some teenagers and she tells them that she's been abducted and who she is, and they laugh at her and tell her, don't be such a silly little girl. And you know what? I think that would have possibly been the case in those days. Maybe now, I think with the way the world is more aware of what's going on, if someone said that to you and was really truly, manic, you would probably pay attention to it. But I don't know, maybe in Chicago in the 1980, you have some little girl going, hey, I've been abducted. Maybe, I don't know. But there's a point there where things could have changed. But
you're also teenagers that she was
teenagers
talking to.
are key, I think. Yeah. I think the teenagers, and I think they were teenage boys, I think that is the key, where they've just gone, don't be so silly little girl or whatever else. So she had an attempt, but at least Ming wasn't aware of it. So that did happen.
Wow.
Then so a month later, on June 15th, there is a phone call. And this phone call it's incredible. Basically, it's Father's Day. And Ming allows Beth to call her father.
Oh, my.
Yeah. And the FBI perhaps you can help me play it because it's really quite moving.
Hello, Irv speaking.
Hello, Dad?
Yes, Bethy. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Is Mommy okay?
Yes.
That's good.
Daddy?
Yes?
Happy Father's Day.
Oh, thank you so much, sweetie.
We can't talk anymore.
When can you come home?
I don't know.
Can I talk?
Okay, Dad?
Can I talk to him?
No.
Yeah.
Can you hear the dad's voice trembling?
Yeah.
Good ringing
Could
voice,
you
yeah.
imagine having someone you love missing for a month and then making that call to you and you having to know they're recording it? You've got to stay cool. It's it's a child, so your daughter in that instance, so you've got to keep
It's
it
also
together.
the first confirmation that they're both still alive.
Correct.
You'd be like relieved, but also now I want to know where they are and get them back. Yeah.
But it is, the fact that they're still alive at that point is
Remarkable.
Yeah.
And unusual, yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
So
That's very
it
disturbing.
is.
Isn't it?
I've watched it lots and lots of times, and you can hear the innocence of the little girl in her voice. Like it's just and the way you can hear the affection that he's got for his daughter, the way he calls her Bethy and sweetie, and
he doesn't want to overwhelm her either.
No, and you can tell he's been told not to say much. It feels very not scripted, but he's been prepared for what he must do in that instance if they get something like that. So well done, Ming, for allowing that phone call to happen, I must say. So
really,
yeah,
we're not giving him anything.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
No,
I'm
fair
glass
enough.
rotting right now.
I didn't see that
Yeah.
either.
I'm already thinking about glass rods
good.
and flaying when we get to
yes, of
sentencing.
course.
But
That's fair. Basically, there comes a day, 53 days into the kidnapping of Mary and Beth, where there is a day that they have an opportunity to escape. And that day is July 7th of 1980. And it's one of those situations where we often come across with these kidnapping situations where they get to a point where they think, look, where does this keep? Well, the mum certainly thinks, this is not good. She's been continually raped. He's becoming more aggressive. It's not going well. And not going well. What a stupid understatement. I apologise for that. But, I think she's fearful that
it's
she
likely
can see
to
the writing on the wall.
escalate. Yeah. And at some point, it's not going to end well, put it that way.
Correct. And what they've done, and religion often comes into a lot of the stories that we cover for good and bad. And I think this one does give me a little bit of comfort, actually. And because they were religious and they had their Christian belief, what the mum would do is she would tell Beth Bible stories while they were
Stuck in the cupboard.
stuck in the box. Yeah. Mary said, she had huge doubts that, they were going to make it out alive. She wasn't convinced that they would, but she thought, look, I can only do what I can do. And she was just trying to keep Beth as calm as she could be. And I think sometimes we've all probably been in those situations where something happens to somebody else, whether it's your partner, your parents, your children, where things are going terribly wrong for somebody else. And it gives you a sense of calmness sometimes where you go, shit, I'm the one who's got to be in control.
Yeah, you've got to focus on the trauma for someone else.
Do else. Yeah. And I suspect that is why this mother, I just find it so impressive to be going through that, the rapes and the torture that he has,
Would you say researching this story has impacted you a bit, Carla? Because I've got to say, we've been podcasting for a year now and I've never heard you say, I love you to your sons as much as you have today.
It's desperate. No, I'm just desperate for them to leave the room and get on with what they're doing so I can get this done. So Mary said, look, I told Beth the Bible stories to try and preserve her optimism. And one of the ones that she said, and I don't know this story, but I'm sure you will, Schmitty, and I'm not sure that you will, Clarky, but she was like the one about Apostle Peter, who was in prison and was set to be killed the next day, only to be saved when God sent an angel. And one of the things that I've seen Beth and Mary talk about, Beth had said, do you think an angel will let us out of the closet and let us go home? And Mary said that, that really was very difficult for her to deal with because she said, look, honestly, I didn't have any idea what was going to happen to us. I just thought I could only try and help this child process what's happening by giving her a sense of hope. But she said, that never during any of the kidnapping and the rapes did Beth have an understanding of what would happen. Mary insulated her from that and her own lack of understanding, which I think is just an absolute blessing. There was one time, however, that Mary wasn't being physically affectionate with him whilst he raped her. So he took Beth out of the closet. He put a plastic bag over her head and under her feet for several minutes, telling Mary she would suffocate after several minutes. He only took it off after Mary kissed him on the mouth.
Oh, he's repulsive.
Yeah, he is. Well, Beth didn't fully grasp the horror. The mum certainly did. And she just leaned into her faith and hoped that things would somehow work out, would work out. She said, at the time, our job was not to understand what was happening. It was just to trust the Lord was going to work out in his way, in his own time. Well, he decided on day 53 that it was time.
I've been busy.
Mary says that she was not mechanically inclined, but she did notice something about the way he had them chained up together, and it was connected to a hinge on the door. Anyway, she said, I thought I'd just give it a go. She said she went to remove the hinge thinking it would be a very difficult thing to do. And she said nobody was more surprised than I was when that hinge pin came out as if it were greased. And I'm sure they would think that probably God had a hand in that, but ultimately I don't think it matters. It was the crucial thing that allowed them to get the door off the frame and allowed them to get out. It was at that point that I think the daughter was sort of freaking out, we can't do this, he'll kill us. And it's that thing you can imagine where they don't really know if he's going to come back. He's warned them so many times. He's given them the impression that he's always watching them. And that would absolutely be the case now, right, with technology. In those days, I don't quite know how that would transpire, but he was certainly filming them. I don't quite know how he'd given them that impression. So it was just they thought that everything that they did he was aware of, so they were terrified that they'd move. Correct. Yeah. Mary is able to get to the phone in the house and she's able to call law enforcement. Mary calls police and she identifies herself. I think that's probably the most important thing. So I don't think she knows where she is, but she knows who she's with, and she's at this house and that he's at work. After making the call, they leave the house, and then there's I've seen a couple of stories, recordings where they talk about this sort of conflict they had where the police told them to stay inside. They were also terrified of him returning. Sometimes it's one of those things that could have made all the difference. Did they go outside? Did they stay inside? Did they do? And they actually did what no one had told them to do, but they left the house and they went around the backyard and they hid behind a car. And that's where they were found. Unmarked police cars came and surrounded the whole house, and one of the policemen had walked around the back of the house thinking that it was actually Ming who was crouching down. And of course, to his surprise, he found Mary and Elizabeth Stauffer.
That's amazing.
They arrested him at his place of work, and his place of work was a successful electronics shop that he owned. He had gone to university in the University of Minnesota, I believe, and he had a successful business that he was running.
He just had a massive, weird obsession with her. Yeah.
Absolutely. So he was arrested at the place of business the same day, and he was taken to the Adult Detention Centre. Things get interesting after this as well. That's not the end of it. The trial is interesting in itself. You'd think it'd be pretty straightforward. 53 days after they were abducted, we are left with a mother and daughter who were kidnapped, a mother who was repeatedly raped, filmed. Brutalised, correct. A child who was utterly traumatised. Oh. And tragically,
a dead
young
child.
Jason Wilkman,
Jason.
Who was murdered. And no one knew right at this point where Jason was or what had happened to him. That had not been solved, and they did not have his body.
Oh.
And it was only when they start talking to them. And of course, the poor mother and daughter as well, they've got this added level of, yes, he was in the boot or the trunk with us for a period of time. He was terrified and whimpering. And I just think, of all the things that have happened to them, that must, for the mum as well, who survived everything, that must be really one of those moments where she knew, once she was told what had happened to the boy, that he was just beaten with a pole when he admitted to what he'd done. Another moment where you just go, oh my God, here but for the grace of God. These things happen in these stories where you just can't quite get your head around from one minute to the next what triggers these people and when they behave certain ways, and the fact that they do survive certain things. And then, that's what that was the amazing part of this story, if anyone was wondering, because we hadn't got to it, was the fact that they were reunited with their family.
He was clearly capable of murder.
Mm-hmm.
And it just hadn't happened to her daughter or her in that time.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clarkie, that was the happy reveal, by the way.
Yeah, it didn't sound very happy in the end, did it?
I'm not sure there was a happy.
She's a trickster.
Sorry.
She's a real Loki, that Swanny.
I'm not. I think I just did a bad job of the story, perhaps, by saying that.
Can you tell me the happy reveal again?
The fact that they escaped
in a happy voice.
It was wonderful.
Sorry.
Ta-da!
God, I mean, I'm glad they escaped.
But after 53 days, I think what is the uplifting bit is, and I probably haven't got to that yet. Probably the uplifting bit is this bit that we're going to
how they survive and
how they survive and how they've got on with their lives.
Yeah,
they refuse to be victims. Some people just can't ever get beyond that, right?
Yeah,
they might say, right, I'm never going to give them, but the trauma is so deep seated that most people can't ever get past it. From everything that I can see, and I have to put it down to their faith. I really do, because I don't know how else you wouldn't just be falling in a heap. They went back. They were reunited with their family. They were absolutely delighted. They, remained an incredible family. I probably need to go into the trial, actually, before I jump ahead to where are they now, because the trial is also pivotal in giving us an idea of where Ming's head was at, because he's not finished yet, people. He's not finished yet. No.
Really?
Okay. So the trial, or trials as it were, because there's two. So in 1980, whilst he's being held in jail and before we go to the first trial, Ming offers $50,000 to an inmate to kill Mary and Beth so they cannot testify against him. Fortunately,
what?
I know, right? He's so evil. Richard Green, the inmate,
was a pacifist.
Fortunately, he communicates this to the FBI, so the FBI are aware of that. I mean,
and he probably says, "And can I have some time?
What can I time off? Yeah,
please?
And he might well have got some. He might well have got a little bit of a kickback. That's okay. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's happened before the first trial's even, gone to court. The first trial takes place in 1980. And it concerns the abduction of Mary and Elizabeth Stauffer and the rapes, plural, of Mary. Because Ming had taken them over state lines, the crime becomes a federal case under the Federal Kidnapping Act. He was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Now, because the federal government still had parole at the time, he technically became eligible for parole after 10 years. And eligible for mandatory release after 30 years.
Right.
Under the old law, federal lifers, as they're known, had to be released after 30 years unless they were proven to be a danger to society. However, at this stage, the judge recommended that Ming serve that full 30 years. I've also read from an attorney who was there, it was sort of him talking about the cases. Here we go. Thomas Berg was his name. Thomas Berg, the former US attorney who prosecuted the kidnapping case, didn't have much contact with Ming, who did not testify at the federal trial. However, he did witness one of his violent outbursts. And this is the thing. This guy was even violent and acting up in court. I was questioning Mary Stauffer, the kidnapping victim, and he said I could see something was going on behind me. He said I turned and the defendant, Ming Sen Shiue, I can't say his name.
Feng Shui.
Ming
Feng Shui.
Oh, I don't want to say that. Had gotten out of his chair on the other side of the counsel table and was coming up, going for my witness. So I kind of instinctively grabbed him.
Technically
so that was
the opposite of Feng Shui. Feng Shui
that
is
was
all
the
about
first
good energy.
trial. So that's their trial. Right. Okay.
Yep.
Maybe the court had bad
Yeah,
feng
yeah.
shui, and that is what set him off.
Ming's second trial was in 1981, or began in 1981. And here's this. How's this? During this trial, Ming smuggled a knife into the courtroom, and when Mary Stauffer testified, he jumped over the table and attacked her, managing to cut her face. She has a scar from her side of her mouth.
No.
Oh.
You'd sue the county.
How did he get in with a knife?
How was she not giving her testimony in a safe space? I mean, he's already tried to attack her in a previous trial.
Correct.
Yeah. I don't understand.
62
what do they call it?
stitches.
Wow.
62 stitches to close her facial wound.
What?
At the same time, Ming promised to
Fiona.
kill her and her daughter when he would be released from prison. He's a piece of work, isn't he?
He is, yeah.
He's not clever in the way that he's trying to conceal or manipulate, or it's just out there. He's so, the rage, the anger, this sort of evil, I'm going to kill you. It's there for all to see. Like there's no smoke and mirrors. It's like, no, it's there. It's there for you all. It's on the table. I'm not trying to hide it.
But I just don't get where he's coming from in the first place. Like, you have a sexual obsession with her, and is it just that because sex and violence are all rolled up for him, and therefore he has to be violent against her as well? You know what I mean? Like, it's just weird.
Or if I can't have you, no one can.
Maybe.
Perhaps. Psychological evaluations of defendants showed no
Is the answer?
signs of mental illness.
What?
What?
It's funny, isn't
Did
it?
not
Because you
see
go,
that
surely
coming.
Lord.
it's like, is that the
No.
absolute definition of mental illness, or is it that going, no, that won't be the excuse, you are actually a psychopath?
You're standing a
Yeah.
trial, and we are
It's
putting you
dividing
away.
the two and being very clear that this is not you going, oh, hang on a tick, I had a moment where I seem to lapse.
I had a
and, which is it?
dissociative fugue for 53 days.
But
Yeah.
Yes.
But also, it's 1981, and mental illness wasn't really a thing.
Very good point. Looking at it through the lens of that time, you're very right. When the second trial, so this was the trial for the murder of little Jason Wilkman, I think is his surname, yes. He was sentenced to 40 years for the murder charge to be served concurrently with his previous 30-year sentence.
Shits me the concurrent.
No,
Like that,
incorrect.
He avoided a first-degree murder charge by agreeing to divulge the location of Wilkman's body. So he's got second-degree murder.
Mm-hmm.
And still got
And
40
serving
years.
it concurrently, though, that gets
Yeah.
me.
Is this a?
Yeah, I'm not a fan
At this
of that,
point,
but-
is this a federal or a state case?
That will be the state
That's
one,
the
the state
state
one,
one.
the local one, yeah.
We have to appeal that.
I must say, though, 40 years for second-degree murder is a lot.
Ming became eligible for mandatory release on July 6, 2010, but you'll be happy to know he was denied.
Hang on.
Well, 30
What?
years from 1980. Yeah.
It's not, no, but hang on. So what I was going to say is, who cares about the 30 years because he's got 40 years? But also, if it's mandatory, how can you get denied?
You
Like I
can,
said before, if you're a danger to
if
society.
you're still considered a danger to society, you can be
Yeah.
kept in. Yeah.
No, but you said he was eligible for mandatory release, whereas before that, if you're a danger to society,
I think.
That was the old
you
law.
could get
I
off.
don't know.
It is very confusing.
I think it's. I'm calling out incorrect use of the word mandatory.
And I think that came up before. I think that you're probably right there.
I
So,
think the mandatory parole is you get it's mandatory that you get an option to go to parole, but it can be denied if you're still considered to be a danger.
Okay.
But I think it was mandatory release, not mandatory
Okay.
parole.
That would make more sense.
Anyway,
That
good
would make
chat.
more sense, actually, the way you say it. On September 28, 2010, the Anoka County District Judge Jenny Walker Jasper, I like that, ruled that Ming
Wow.
could be detained indefinitely as a dangerous sexual predator, even if he is granted parole. He was also found to have a sexual psychopathic personality. That'll come as a big shock to all of us. Ming, who had never sought sex offender treatment in prison, that's interesting. I didn't realise the onus would be on the person. I thought it would be offered, but anyway, apologised and begged for Mary's forgiveness during the hearing, saying she had every right to hate him. Beth hoped that Ming's apology was genuine, but thought he was too dangerous to ever be freed.
Good on you,
Ming
Beth.
appealed the ruling that declared him a sexual predator, but he was declined. As of
I'm not.
2016,
Yeah, you are, mate.
the United States Parole Commission has repeatedly denied Ming's request for release.
Good.
Ming is now 72 years old. So his federal conviction for kidnapping, second-degree murder, kidnapping in Minnesota, criminal penalty, federal life imprisonment, Minnesota 40 years imprisonment. And yes, he's currently imprisoned in Rochester. Before we go to trial and before we pull apart the story, I wanted to let you know a little bit about where Mary's at, and Mary and Elizabeth actually are at now. And there's a whole heap of stuff you can actually see online. They've been interviewed a number of times. And they just seem like really nice people, very genuine, very much about their family. I think the daughter is a grandmother herself now, and they've just decided to get on with life. In an interview with Lifetime, Mary Stauffer says it was important for her to share her story, and there were times where she questioned her faith. We pray for Ming, she says. We hated what he did, but we didn't hate him. Mary says after her ordeal, which she says doesn't define her, I'm like, my goodness, it would take a very special, a very strong person to be able to find goodness after that. She and her husband were able to finish their missionary careers and retire. So I think they ended up traveling again. I think they actually went back to the Philippines. They have been very happy to see their children get married and have children of their own. He didn't get to ruin our lives, said Beth Stauffer. He ruined his life.
Wow.
It takes a very special
empowered,
kind
isn't
of person, people, family to be able to handle that. And I think sometimes when we look at these stories, people have come from troubled backgrounds and they've ended up in situations because their own lives have been pretty rough, and they end up in situations where their safety is compromised, or they've been exposed to things that they shouldn't necessarily have happened to them. But with the Stauffers, I think, they were just people trying to help other people.
They're pretty ordinary. I mean, she was just
they were pretty
teacher.
ordinary. Yeah,
He was
she was
just
just a maths
educator
teacher
as well.
They didn't have anything that was special. They weren't interested in certain things, but they were just a tight-knit family unit. And I think after the trauma of what happened, they had something to go back to that was real and stable. And I think because of that, they were very fortunate. Most people you wouldn't have been surprised to hear that they had ended up as drug addicts, or had done something all for themselves, or had just couldn't cope with what had happened to them. But their coping mechanisms seem to be right up there, because they have gone on to live rich lives in terms of their contribution to community and others and their own family. So that was, I guess, a very long-winded way of where I started, saying there was something about this story that I thought, oh, that's really nice to see that people have ended up, starting out as victims, but actually not allowing it to define them and not allowing it to destroy their lives. It's quite uplifting in that respect. Absolutely terrible for Jason Wilkman's family.
Oh, poor thing.
Just tragic. Little boy. I mean, that is really, really beyond the pale, isn't it?
Just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Wrong place, wrong time. All right, so we can go to trial.
Well, look, I'll start with,
please do.
When I was editing I think it was the lottery murder, and we were talking about Do Rice, and we got to sentencing, you're like, I hate her. I feel like that about Ming the Merciless here. I really, really, really dislike him. There's nothing about him that redeems him for me. So
there are no features that yes, I agree with that.
He's just a monster. And there were parts of the story that the idea of being locked up in a cupboard or a box and just confined like that and not knowing what your fate's going to be is just horrendous. So I think he has to be locked in a box for sure. Yep. But the other part of my sentence comes about when you were talking about how he brought Beth out because Mary wouldn't be intimate or give him affection.
Yeah, with a plastic bag. Oh,
and all that
that's
horror,
rough.
right? That was awful. So the context of my sentence is a story I heard recently which hails from Scotland. And it is actually about an altercation between a man and a woman in the street. And according to the sun.co.uk, the headline reads, Seagull ate man's tongue off pavement after it was bitten off by female yob during gruesome row.
Oh, my God. Oh my God.
No.
You should have saved that for you could have saved for an episode.
What?
One of our shits and giggles headlines. Best headlines.
So when you were talking about her having to kiss him on the mouth, it was just repulsed me so much. And it reminded me of this story of this woman whose name is Bethany Ryan, how she had an altercation with a man. The man was a bit aggressive and her own...
A bit aggressive.
Well, he did something,
Unlike
but the
her.
actual barrister... Well, yeah, her barrister described her response as being a little bit out of the ordinary, where apparently she pushed him against the body and then kissed him on the mouth, and somehow in that she was able to bite off a section of his tongue.
Oh.
And he spits it out, and a seagull, and I don't know if you remember, but UK seagulls are like
Albatrosses.
the biggest, they're massive albatrosses, yeah. And this seagull swoops down and takes it. So I think Bethany Ryan needs to visit our mate Ming on a regular basis and give him, because this was in Edinburgh, not Glasgow. So unlike a Glasgow kiss, which is a headbutt in the forehead, she's going to give him an Edinburgh kiss, her style, and she's going to bite off a section of his tongue to make him appreciate that if a woman doesn't want to, then you shouldn't push it. And making a person who you are violating and you are brutalizing show you affection, fake or otherwise, is just so disgusting that I just think he can have his tongue and all other parts of him cut off too slightly while she's there. I'm sure she's got a switchblade. I'll give her one if she hasn't.
Yep.
That's
You'll
my
lend her
sentence.
one. Nice work.
I will.
Is there going to be a seagull there as well? Maybe the seagull should peck his pecker off at the same time.
Absolutely. Multiple seagulls, because they are quite frightening. Yep.
Yeah.
I also
When they're big, they are.
Yeah. I also saw a footage of a seagull eating a pigeon in the street. So yeah, we'll set.
Oh.
Sorry.
I think I've seen that
Yeah.
one, Pert. I think
That's
I have seen that.
I don't know who I'd
So I
want
think
to win the
definitely
battle
seagulls
of
are
a
involved.
seagull and a pigeon, because they're both annoying.
And they're both flying rats.
Yeah,
Anyway,
pretty much.
Clarky, what have you got?
I mean, there's a lot to sort of digest, and I think clearly the way that Mary was treated is disgusting. I don't know why he needed to have Beth along for the ride. You know, I think that's pretty repulsive and also very unnecessary. And I think what happened to Jason, I mean, really, that was your way of managing that situation. I can't get my head around what it would take to do that. The other thing I want to discuss, I guess, is the use of the word obsessed, because I've been Googling it. We had a little break, everyone. And during that time, I've just been Googling it to just kind of go, obsessed is a word that gets used for a lot of people to not to justify, but it kind of labels their bad behavior as a precursor to their bad behavior. And I think plenty of people get obsessed and don't do any of that. And I think of the Icehouse song, My Obsession, and, you know, that's more about love than anything else. And I just feel like we need another word to describe people in this situation that isn't something that you can get confused with love. And I don't know what it is, but obsession to me has nothing to do with the behavior that he exhibited. He is an absolute and I think I've heard that, you know, obsessed used in a number of different situations where people have ended up being raped or murdered or whatever.
Maybe it's like psychopathic predation because he picked her.
Yeah.
And he hunted her.
Sorted her out. Yep.
Yeah.
10 years or something.
And I think, you know, and I don't mean to use this in the context of this case so much as in the context of so often in the media with these sorts of things. I would like that.
I'm a bit obsessed with Naked and Afraid. You don't see me going around killing anyone.
What's that one you like, Swanny?
Yeah, Intervention.
Yeah. Like, you know, that's obsession, right? But it hasn't led to you abducting people, putting them in cupboards
weird.
And, you know.
But that's also the problem, because it's not an obsession. It's just the way we use the word, isn't it?
Exactly.
Because it's so easy.
It's a
We're like,
passing
oh my
interest.
God, I'm obsessed. Oh my God.
I've watched a few of these. Yeah.
Yeah. We say it's just a word of the time.
But I also think it's...
I'll just listen to
sorry, no, go.
No, it's just one of those things that comes into, is it common parlance, where we use it because everybody is using it. So it's been totally watered down in terms of what it means. The true term, what the word really means. It's like, I'm not obsessed with interventions. I like it a lot, and I probably watch it a little bit too much, and then that's it.
But it
you're not
kind of
obsessed by
means
it.
you can't get someone out of your mind. So we need something that describes somebody who acts in such a horrid way. It's just, to me, completely the wrong word to use for these sorts of situations.
So maybe the sentence is, we beat him with a thesaurus until we come up with a better
no,
term.
because I don't think he's the one who needs beating for the use of the word obsessed. I think maybe that sits with the media to,
Okay.
have to explore that a little bit more. Anyway, no, so my obsession, God, here I go. My sentence for Ming is based on the Ming dynasty out of China. And so there used to be some pretty horrible punishments that happened to the concubines. And I won't go into the whole lot of it, but basically what I want is for Ming, when he's in jail, to share the jail with Baba, who, I don't know if you've heard about Bubba before, but Bubba is kind of this big bloke in jail who is bald, and he's the one who's going to rape you if anyone's going to rape you in jail. But also Ming is going to be hobbled, so he can't get away, because that's what happened in the Ming dynasty. They hobbled the concubines, so they literally had to get carried into the room to then have sex with people.
Oh my God. I didn't know
Gross.
that.
And
can I ask, what does cobbled mean, where your legs just don't work or your feet?
hobbled. I
Hobbled.
said hobbled, didn't I?
You
You
did
said
say
hobbled.
Yeah, I was being
Yeah.
determined
Well, it's
not
like
to.
feet binding.
But we had,
Like the feet
remember
were
we had
bound.
this before,
I heard
where
that.
people were getting hobbled on the cobblestones, and then we were calling it cobbled.
corn
Isn't
cobbling.
it what
That's
We called
it.
happened in
Yeah.
Misery? She's just smashed his ankles with the hammer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Goblin, yeah.
And his prison cell is going to be a 21-inch by 2-foot wide cupboard. So there's only room for one person in it, not two.
How's Bubba going to rape him?
He's going to get carried to Bubba because
I
because
see.
he's
Okay.
hobbled.
Right.
We take it
Yeah,
out.
yeah, it's time. And
Oh,
maybe he'll
okay.
be forced to show Bubba some affection whilst he's doing it as well. That's my sentence for Ming.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Ming.
Swanny.
I feel like Ming softens his name in some ways. I don't know what that is, but
It
because
makes him sound silly almost.
yeah, because my kids used to watch I used to call one of the twins Ming Ming, and it was based on a character out of the Wonder Pets. It's come back to me, Ming Ming, and it was a little cute little
Little
fluffy
anime
dart.
type
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Anyway,
Uh,
so I'm sorry that I had to call him by his first name, but anyway.
all
Okay, in terms
Ming
of
Feng.
Oh,
punishment,
sorry.
I struggle with this one.
Before you
Yeah,
do
tell
it,
him.
so Ming is the Mandarin word for brilliant, by the way.
Oh, there you are.
Inaptly named.
Yeah. I was just having a little giggle to myself because you had interjected there. It gave me a moment to realise that I think that I say this before every single sentence here. I go, I really struggled with this. And I honestly think if there's a listener that says, they'd be like, no shit, Carla, you struggle with all
No,
of
but that's when
them.
we brace ourselves because we know something
No,
bad's coming.
not at all. No, it's not. That's the problem. It's not particularly, insightful. And the problem is Ming, because most people I look for something that is a weakness in them or something that I think shows who they truly are and then what would truly upset them. Whereas with this character, it feels as though a lot of those things are missing, right? That's, you go back to what his mother said and when he's done stuff as a child and whatever else, he seems to be...
Is it the psychopath kind of
Yes, he's
devoid
more...
of emotion?
I can associate him more with like an animal. And then I think that's unfair to animals.
What was the dog
So
reference
what
at the start?
Yeah, the
Dog
dog was
feelings
the-
of a
Feelings
dog
of a
or something.
dog. Yeah, right.
But I find that
Yeah,
I find that
not apt.
incongruous with the way I feel about my dog feels for me. So I can't work to that. But where I'm the sort of the territories in which I'm sort of looking at, and you guys always seem to be able to finesse me into a punishment. That's where I struggle. But this idea of stalking someone, the idea of hunting someone, being, when you're the victim, that's a feeling that must be just terrifying. So I thought for someone who's so violent, I would like to see the tables turn and he be the man that he is put into an animal's body and then be stalked and hunted over a period of time, where the animal who is pursuing him sort of plays with him and toys with him. So he's hurt a little bit, and then they back off, and then they come in again, because that's kind of what he's done. She didn't know it, thank God, that he'd been after her for that long. But it was such a long campaign of stalking or hunting or whatever you want. I'm just delighted that Mary wasn't aware of it, really, because if she had have known for all those years, that's what was going on.
You would have been terrified going out. Yeah.
That would affect every part of your life. Now, we don't have the same person in him. I don't know how his brain works, because it seems that he's just he's quite evil. But that was the only sort of territories. Perhaps you guys can help me sort of come into make a little bit more what we could do. But I want him to feel as though he's helpless because he is animal, but he feels the human. Do you know what I mean?
Are you thinking of the cat that plays with the mouse, or are you thinking the zebra on the savannah plains that literally has to look everywhere all the time in case the lion is coming?
The latter, but there needs to be some interaction at some point before that. I don't want him to have just one big kill. I want him to have to suffer both physically, how he's raped her repeatedly. It'd be nice to see that there were points along the timeline where there were violent episodes for him, shall we say, but then just on the edge of it being all over, he was allowed to escape again and then come back again, so that he feels this idea of because it was not a one-off event for him. It's such a prolonged campaign of
what
abuse.
About the little kid who gets swallowed by the anaconda but doesn't die, and then wakes up the next day worried that the anaconda, so has full memory of what's just happened, wakes up the next day worried
inside the anaconda?
Yeah, because they swallow them whole, and then they normally die in the anaconda, but before he dies...
I know that. It was on the news this morning. They found a grandma in Indonesia.
God.
The anaconda, there was a bit... Nana had been missing for a little while, and they found one that had a chunky bit in his midsection.
Yeah, there's Nan.
And he hadn't just put on a bit of weight. Nana was in the middle.
Why do I think that's funny?
That was on the news this morning.
Oh, that could have been one of our ridiculous ones as well.
I feel like we've given two of our ridiculous ones
away.
Oh,
no, goodness. But...
Seagull tongue is the worst.
But so he could get swallowed whole by the anaconda, then spend 10 hours in the belly thinking, I'm going to die, and then wake up again and then have to go, oh, my God, I know the anaconda's here somewhere, and see how...
So he's out. He wakes up out
He's out
the
again.
anaconda.
Yeah, correct. Sorry, yes.
Again,
And then he lives in fear of it happening. And, of course, it always happens, but he never dies. Yes. And so, that whole thing of prolonged torture.
Well, we could also just go back to one of Clarkie's and put him in a helicopter and dangle him over shark-infested waters that's got some nice, what is it called? Burley or
Tip
something?
some blood in.
You just sledge him up a bit.
What do you call that?
Yeah, burley.
All chopped up stuff.
Yeah.
Burley, yeah.
Yeah.
And then toss him in and we'll leave him at that.
Leave him to the shots.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, Swanny, that was an unexpected case.
It was.
Not that we ever know what you're going to bring us, but you always bring us something, dark, macabre.
And particularly joyous, you're right.
And uplifting at the end.
It certainly wasn't one of our funnier ones. Never mind.
Oh, that's all right. That's the genre, I think.
Maybe he needs leeches on his penis.
That's not bad. I just found it nice that the victims, well, Mary and Elizabeth, not obviously dear Jason, but there was something positive there. Mm-hmm. And that they could tell us what had happened. There's so many times where we're surmising exactly. And this was being able to say, well, what about this and what about that? I thought, well, I just found it a little bit different.
Yep, no, very good. All right. Well, as we say every week, miss you already.
Ciao.
Bye. Ciao, ciao.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.